The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, whenever you may be listening. Welcome to Ask Claire along the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And returning to the program, very happy to welcome back an Oregon sports legend, Frank Peters. How are you today, Frank?
Well, this is a particularly nice time for me because I evaluate my life according to the 4 phases of Santa Claus. And the first phase is, of course, when you're young, you believe in Santa Claus. And then the next phase is that you get a little older, you don't believe in Santa Claus. And then, as you mature a little bit, you are Santa Claus. and then finally, you wind up, you look like Santa Claus.
So where are you at today, my friend? Which phase?
I mean more towards looking like Santa Claus, but I'm going to get a haircut and I'll be fine.
There you go. There you go. Well, one thing, we just kind of scratched the surface of your amazing adventure-filled life, and one thing I don't think we covered last time around, you certainly have one of the all-time great baseball sports nicknames. Anybody from Oregon who knows Frank Peters will say, the Flake. So where did that come from?
First of all, it rhymes, right, which is kind of important. And
exactly.
Back in the day when we had the Journal, which was a afternoon paper in Portland, and we had the Oregonian, which we still have in the morning paper. And so I was playing for the Portland Beavers, played 3 years, and they weren't drawing well, so they needed some color in to cover up our losing seasons, and so the sports writers named me Frank the Flake, and I tried to direct what is a flake, and I said, well, it's a fun way of winning, and so rather than fight it, I just ran with it. So I try to make it work for you, and so it was. Ken Wheeler, I believe, was the one that thought of it. So you take, and Top Gun, all those jet pilots, they all have nicknames. So I'm just happy to have a nickname.
Exactly, and it's one that's lasted now, going on half a century. So that shows its staying power, or your staying power, or a little of both. So one thing again, your path in life has taken you across the paths of many memorable people. We talked about briefly, I think, the fact that you managed Jim Bouton in his comeback in 1975 as a player for the Mavericks. But you guys actually were teammates back in 1969 with the AAA Vancouver Mounties, and maybe talk about being Jim's teammate then and the fact that he was writing, really one of the immortal sports books of all time, Ball 4, and just your memories of Jim and that time and your reactions to the book.
Well, my first encounter with Bouton was I was playing for the Rochester Red Wings, AAA ball. Earl Weaver was the manager, and Bouton was sent down from the Yankees to play pitch AAA because he'd hurt his arm. And I'd heard about him because, he'd made the All-Star team. He won 20 games. He was a big star in the World Series. And he's out there pitching, and he's just throwing up just balloons. I mean, I felt sorry for him. And I thought, well, this is the end of him. I'll probably never see him again. And then I got, one way or another, we crossed paths. He was in the Coast League. And at the time, he was writing his book, Ball 4. And all of the characters in the book I played with, and two of them I went to high school with. Dick Daney, who was he depicted as being very vain, and of course he was a movie star, good looking, so I guess you can be vain. And Jerry Stevenson, who dyed his hair orange, but he really didn't dye his hair orange. He put something on it. When he went in the pool, the chlorine made his hair orange.
Oh no!
So all of the characters in the book I was familiar with, and he really got it right, you know. And he talked about Steve Hoveley quite a bit, and Steve and I became pretty good friends. He was a graduate from Stanford, and at that time, college baseball players were kind of there wasn't very many of them, and Bouton was kind of an intellectual. And Steve, one time I asked him, I said, Steve, are you growing a beard? And this would be a typical Steve Hoveley answer. No, Frank, I'm not growing a beard. I am passively accepting one.
I love that. That is a beautiful line.
And so then, to move forward a little bit, the book came out, and you know, what happens is the corporate baseball players, and owners and stuff, and management really complained about it, but it probably did more to help baseball than anything at all, because Bing Russell, who was Kurt Russell's father, owned the Mavericks, always used to say, Frank, it's all about the talent. The talent is the players. The talent isn't really the coaches, and the talent really isn't the general managers. The talent is the players. And that's what Bowden was focusing on, and he put everybody on the map. And he really did and of course, a lot of the ball players resented it, and most of them that resented it had never bothered to read the book, or maybe they couldn't read the book. And then jumped.
Yeah, I know there's some quote of Pete Rose attacking the book, and then the reporter says, well, have you ever read it? No, but people told me what was in it.
And then jump forward a little bit. Bouton is a TV commentator. This is in about 1970. This is, let's see, about 5 years later.
Right.
He's TV sportscaster in New York. Great job, but but stirring up waves a little bit there. And he has a vacation, so he comes out and pitches for the Mavs. And so I pick him up at the airport because I don't want to have him take a long time to settle in with the team because he doesn't have much time there. So I want to make him comfortable, and we talk a little bit and stuff. And I think he pitched the next night, and he's out there about the fourth or fifth inning, and he goes, and he's got a couple runners on base, and so I call time, and I run out to the mound, and he goes, hey, Skip, he says, don't take me out. He says, I can pitch my way. I says, look at Jim. I says, I read your book, and in your book you say that you can pitch through this. I just came out to say hello. And so he wound up doing really well, and of course moved through the Mavericks on through, and then he meets Ted Turner, who gives him a shot with Atlanta, basically, and he earned it. He really did well. And then let me give you a little update on him. He passed on in, let's say, I think August.
Yep.
And so I want to, the Hillsboro Hops does a Maverick tribute every Monday. And so they're having a Maverick night. And so I said, look, they're going to have me throw out the first pitch. And I says, look, I says, let me throw 4 knuckleballs in honor of Jim Bouton. No, you can't do that. Well, I don't know if you know my background, but it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, right?
Oh, yeah. I use that line every now and then, too.
Exactly. So what I did is I put 4 baseballs in a Crown Royal bag because they'd never suspect that. And wrote his number 56, on the back of the mound and threw the 4 knuckleballs.
I love it. I love it.
In honor of him. And so amazing how a Crown Royal bag will cover things up. So Bouton isn't with us anymore, but he's certainly with us in spirit. He was really a first class, a good guy, and for the Mavericks, when he played for the Yankees, he was a rebel. For the Mavericks, he was a little conservative.
Yeah, well, that very first game he pitched, I was there that night with my dad, and I think I got to see most, if not all, of his home games. And, it was just kind of thrilling to see this is the guy who wrote Ball 4, and he's out there pitching. And, I just try and read everything I can come across about Bouton and about the Mavericks. And is this something you'd remember that, he was like 36 when he came back. That's older than you were at the time, and most of your players were in the early 20s. And when one of the players addressed him as Mr. Bouton, he just couldn't help but start laughing.
Well, one of the
team.
One of the things that was really kind of fun about him was that winter I went back to visit him in New York, and he went back to his sportscasting job, and he took me up to the studio, and we're kind of going through there, and I go, "Gee, Jim, how come everybody's kind of cold? They're not real loose and happy." He says, "Well," he says, "they're kind of uptight because of what I did last night." And I go, "Well, what was that, Jim?" He says, "Well, I interviewed the New York Giants football coach, and then when I put it on air, I played it backwards and said, that's the only thing he said sensible all year." And everybody took it personal.
Oh my God, yeah. A real rebel, but Go ahead.
What? I'm sorry, what?
No, I was going to say, go ahead, Frank. My thought, though, just was that when I look at Bouton's life, one of the great lessons I think I've taken away and a lot of people have taken away, follow your heart, follow your dreams, and don't be afraid to take big risks. Him walking away from that big New York sportscasting job to follow his dream of playing baseball again, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what word for word what he believed, and he was involved with Rob Nelson with the Big League Chew, so both those guys.
Yeah, please tell that story.
Yeah, they were sitting out in the bullpen, and you're always looking for something to do if you're sitting out in the bullpen, and somebody was chewing tobacco, and they were talking about how nasty it was, and they said, we ought to do something that to replace that. And so they put together they went on the internet or whatever it was and got a recipe to make bubble gum and experimented with it, and everything fell into place, and it took off, and it's still popular.
Multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah.
This goes to show you what the power of a good idea can do.
Yeah, something I wanted to address here that has just kind of come up in the last, 6 months or so, is that baseball is looking at changing their minor leagues. And
yes.
What they intend to do is, when the Mavericks were independent, we made such a splash that baseball doesn't allow independent teams to play with their in a regular league. So an independent Mavericks couldn't be in the Northwest League anymore. So we kind of changed baseball that way. And then we also changed it with the idea that there's whole independent baseball leagues right now with their own independent rules and stuff. that fit into minor league baseball. Well, what baseball is looking at do is they're looking at cutting back the minor leagues by 40 teams. They're looking at changing the draft from June until the end of summer, and they say their goal is to pay the players more, right? Give them a more of a big league experience, better ballparks, and make it a better travel time, not so long. Okay. Well, of course, beware of people bearing gifts, right? Because there will be lots of controversy and lots of consequences on it. One consequence may be that more wood bat leagues like the Pickles may become more popular, and because there won't be places for minor leaguers to play. One other possibility is more independent baseball. One of the things that baseball is looking at using is the college as their kind of their farm system. So baseball is going to change a great deal, and there'll be a lot of controversy about it, which will be kind of interesting to watch. Now, my experience, and the only thing I have to say on it is that Marvin Miller came through Double-A ball to talk to the minor leaguers back in the day, talking about unionizing ball players. And I listened to him very carefully, but I didn't think it would work. Okay, well, sure. They made $20,000 a year then. Now they make $20 million a year now. So I was 100% wrong. So there's going to be big changes because of this, and it'll be interesting to see. Now, the next thing, not necessarily related to that, but actually related to it, is that the NCAA is going to allow college players to be compensated in some way. So an Oregon State basketball player theoretically can make some kind of money some way. Well, let me give you my experience in that.
Sure.
First of all, to quote Bing, you should reward talent, and the players are obviously the talent, and there's big money going around. I mean, right now there's a football game with Baylor and Oklahoma, and there's 80,000 people there, and national television, and the players are getting no rewards, right? Okay. Yeah. So I'm playing in the Final Four, and their big argument is that only the top players will make money. Okay. So here's an example. So I'm playing in the Final Four for Oregon State, and and I am the 5th best basketball player on the Final Four. Okay, the biggest star is Terry Baker, who won the Heisman Trophy and was National Player of the Year. The next biggest star was Mel Counts, who went on to 12 years in the NBA and was All-American. The third biggest star was Steve Pauley, who was number one in the nation in the decathlon and track. The fourth best ball player was Jim Jarvis from Roseburg, who went on to become All-American. So I'm the 5th best ball player. So we get 4 tickets to each game. In those days, they played for 3rd and 4th, so there's 2 games. So technically, I get 8 tickets. Theoretically, I'm not supposed to sell those to make money on them, but I went and I bought very cheaply 8 more tickets from my other ball players who, for one reason or another, wasn't using. So I've got 8 tickets to our game, and then the 8 tickets there. So I've got 16 tickets. which I
Okay.
sold for $100 a ticket. Okay? So I took the $1,600 that I had, and I bought a wedding ring and got engaged to Lindsay, and we got married, and then we had a daughter named Darren. And then the end result of that is I have a very fine daughter, and I have two wonderful granddaughters, Reed and Pierce, one at Colorado State University and one at Oregon State University.
Way cool.
So now I was the worst basketball player on the team, and look at the rewards and benefits I got from not a whole lot of money, and so it didn't matter whether Terry Baker would have made $1 million, right? Because so I still got mine. So there's definitely a trickle down. So when they start complaining about who's going to get the money, I'm all for college athletes being compensated.
I'm with you, especially, now it has really turned into such a big business. I mean, who would have imagined 40, 50 years ago, mega stores selling team merchandise, the broadcast rights. It's really as much a profit center as, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball. I'm with you on this 100%.
Yeah, and the little guy will get the benefits, and even the smaller schools will get the benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, can we jump back to when you first signed professionally with the Baltimore Orioles, and you signed as a third baseman, correct?
Right. I got what I did is I signed after my junior year in college, and I got $30,000 as a bonus. Which, what is that today? $300,000? Maybe more.
Yeah, pretty good money for the time. Yeah.
Right. And I went out and I bought an old 1949 Pontiac. Put my money away, right? And so when we're negotiating, I asked Harry Dalton was the general manager. I says, who is the third baseman for Baltimore? Because I hadn't really followed it very much.
Oh.
And now everybody knows everything. But in those days, we didn't get interviewed. I didn't at Oregon State. I didn't do one interview the whole time I was there.
Wow.
Okay, so I asked Harry. I says, "Who's your third baseman at Baltimore?" And he says, "There's a guy that is he says he's a very fine fielder. He cannot run. He doesn't have a very good arm, and we don't know if he can hit or not. His name is Brooks Robinson." And I said, "Well, Brooks Robinson." I said, "That doesn't sound like a big league name. Okay, I'll sign." So very Brooks good. Robinson won 16 Golden Gloves and made 18 All-Star. He may still be making the All-Star team. And I've got a little statue of him right in my next to my TV set, and it's the only statue I have.
I love it.
And you know what? I tip of the cap to him because he deserved it, and he is a real fine gentleman. And it was a pleasure to carry his luggage, so to speak. Yeah.
But you still had a very fine professional career at the highest levels.
And you know how I know how great he was is that I looked up the other day on the internet, and Norman Rockwell did a damn picture of him with a little kid signing an autograph. And I says, if I'd have beat him out, they'd have run me out of town on a rail.
Yeah, really. I mean, that would be like trying to run, I don't know, Bart Starr out of Green Bay or Santa Claus out of the North Pole.
Or tell George Washington his time is up.
Yeah. You got to step aside, George. The new kid's ready to take over.
Yeah, exactly.
Lordy. Well, Frank, as we roll into 2020, you were talking about these proposed changes in the minors, and I'm looking. You're looking back from the perspective of decades as a player, a manager, an athlete. I'm looking back from more than 50 years now as a fan, and just more broad thoughts on some of the things they're trying. It seems like baseball has a struggle in, more broadly, in that they want to respect tradition and keep the interest of the longtime fans, but yet they're also, I think, trying to change it up enough to attract a new generation, and that just seems like an awfully tough tightrope to walk. Your thoughts?
Well, for one thing, if you cut back the minor leagues, you're cutting back the exposure of baseball to younger people, because the thing that's always used is, well, my dad took me to my first baseball game, and it's always been a kind of an American experience. So I think that there are unexpected consequences. However, I just watched Ken Burns's 18 hours of baseball, and starting in whatever it was, 1800 and something, and they have had unexpected consequences all through the history of it. So it's never been there's been ups and downs in baseball ever since, and I think baseball will get through this because, for whatever reason, and the magic of baseball is that you score with the person, you don't score with the ball, and everybody gets their time at bat. One thing I want to share with you here that right now I'm involved in is that this last month, myself and Ed Fredenberg, he went to Oregon State and played. We were basketball buddies on the East Bank, and we're both in the Oregon State Hall of Fame in basketball. And so we put together a proposal that I'm nominating, and I'll read it right here. This is my nomination for the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame for 2020. The Portland Mavericks baseball team and experience, the owners of Kurt Russell and Bing Russell, the sports journalists, the Oregonian and the Oregon Journal, and the creators of the Battered Bastards of Baseball documentary, featured in Netflix with Chapman Way, McLean Way, and Brocker Way, the three brothers. And recently, Netflix announced again that Battered Bastards of Baseball, which is still currently on Netflix, is one of their top documentaries, and it's on its way to becoming a sports classic. So if any of your listeners out there haven't seen Battered Bastards of Baseball on Netflix, it stars Kurt Russell, Bing Russell, and I have a great supporting cast.
You
character.
Certainly do. You certainly do.
And Bouton is absolutely breathtaking in it when he names all of the ball players in 30 seconds on the Johnny Carson show.
Yeah, great clip. Oh, Frank, half an hour has sped by, so going to need to wrap this one. But if you're game to come back again one of these days, I'm sure we have not exhausted the stories. I mean, you stealing first base in Seattle, and a whole lot more. So, will you come back sometime?
Oh, I'd love to, because when I was younger, I was a character with some controversy, and now I'm considered colorful.
Yeah, an elder statesman and living history, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope people listening have enjoyed it as much as I have. So, Frank Peters, thanks so much, and until we meet again. And tip of the cap to the Ducks, and maybe we can show those East Coasters that we can beat them in the Rose Bowl. Oh, I'd love it.
Okay,
Until we meet
thanks.
again, everybody.
Okay, thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Happy travels.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.